Welcome to Living Dialogues. I'm Duncan Campbell, and with me for this particular program, I'm very delighted to have my old friend of almost 20 years now, Stephan Schwartz. Stephan and I have done dialogues together over the years. Now, what I want to alert everybody to is that you are now about to share a lot of your extraordinary life history as an expert in consciousness, very well traveled, one who has worked for the government, one who has been a leader in citizen diplomacy and remote viewing, all manner of consciousness research, and have compiled your experience of being an intuitive change agent, as was I back in the 60s. And you have now offered a seminar entitled How to Become an Effective Agent of Change, Promoting Well-Being in Your Life and in the World, in which you're distilling your extraordinary life experience and your ability of your deep research, the many research papers you have written and explored, in a 5-week course that's going to go this coming April 20. Will be the beginning of it, and you can sign up for it as a deep listener here to Living Dialogues by going to schwartzreport.net, and there will be information there on it, how you can register for this extraordinary seminar, which will be 5 weeks online, that you can participate in at your own pace, and you will also be able to ask questions. It will not be live interchange of question, immediate answer, but there will be, in a sense, an online discussion group that will allow for participation of participants in that same day kind of format. So, Stephan, really a very, very strong welcome here. And what I'd like to do is just start out giving people just a sense of how extraordinary this particular offering from you is going to be. And I'm going to read just the first couple of paragraphs of what you've said about this upcoming online seminar, available to any of our deep listeners by going to schwartzreport.net. schwartz report.net. You begin by saying, the power of individual choice. Throughout human history, there have been basically 3 ways to create social transformation. 1, the advancement of technology and science, that in turn serves the other 2. Second is change compelled by physical power. It is almost always coercive and often violent, and it is a zero-sum game. One side is forced to submit. The third avenue of change is one brought about by something so subtle it is often not taken seriously. Small individual choices and the power they have to create change in oneself is a fundamental alteration of what I call, quote, beingness. And you go on to say, as you've lived your own life and your social transition experiences, you've noticed certain patterns. You've studied them, you've distilled them over the years, and you've tried to actually then present them in a format that is participatory here. And you conclude by saying, I have tried to do 3 things in this workshop. First, to bring into focus how successful, enduring change begins with individuals and goes through a process of reaching a critical consensus. Second, to present you with real-world examples illustrating how these techniques are used to achieve social transition that is compassionate and life-affirming in favor of well-being for all. And third, to highlight the social and neuroscience research that underpins why this process works. It is a practical guide showing how people who do not hold positions of power or wealth can actually change the world in compassionate and life-affirming ways, and how you can participate directly by yourself and with others in doing so. So, Stephan, with that introduction of what's to come in this particular seminar, I'm just going to let you begin and take it wherever you want.
Well, Duncan, I got interested in this because 4 times in my life I've been involved with change. Back in the 50s, like you, I was in the early 60s. I was involved with the civil rights movement. I was just a young man being a demonstrator and getting arrested at demonstrations. And that was the 50s and 60s. And in the 70s, I was one of the small group who transformed the American military from an elitist conscription organization, the kind of army that I served in, to an all-volunteer meritocracy that was neutral about race and gender. That's the 70s. And then beginning in the early 80s, what you described, citizen diplomacy, trying to win a Third World War with the Soviet Union. And through all of this, I have been I'm an experimentalist, a consciousness researcher. And as I had to be aware, particularly how nonviolent change, which promoted being learning, I came to realize that that was, in fact, what you did want to get. You wanted that kind of change, not violent change. I started about, it's about 25 years ago, doing research very specifically into how this kind of nonviolent wellness fostering change occurred. And out of it came 8 laws. I did not invent them, but I saw them emerge and I wrote them out to define them. So let me go over those quickly, because that's what this workshop teaches you, among other things, how individuals have actually done this. So I want to stress that I am not talking about theory. I'm not talking about philosophy. I'm not talking about metaphysics in that sort of way. I am talking objectively verifiable, factual information. And I think that's very important to know about this workshop. The first law, and these are patterns, is that the individuals individually and the group collectively must share a common intention. Now, you can see by looking at today's news that one of the problems that is going on in our politics is that there is no agreement about common intention. And you can see the same thing if you're in a school group or a church group or a community group, whatever. Getting to share a common intention is not always easy, but it is one of the important things you have to do. Gandhi got independence for India without a war. I can't think of another example. We couldn't do it without a war. Gandhi was able to for India, and it didn't take a war. So part of the way he did this was he got everyone in India, all these people, to share a common intention. So law number 2, the individuals and the group may have goals, but they may not have cherished outcomes. And I learned this from the abolitionists and from the women who were trying to get women to vote, women suffragists, that they wanted something to happen, but they didn't demand that it happen in a certain way. For instance, I would read in the correspondence of abolitionists during the slave era, and they would say, I know that slavery is a moral wrong, and I want it to end, and I'm going to do everything I can. I just don't know how it's quite going to happen, but I'm going to do everything I can to make it happen. So you can have you can have a goal, but you don't have cherished outcomes. It doesn't have to happen in a certain way. And law number 3, the group must accept that their goal may not be reached in their lifetime and be okay with this. And again, I learned this particularly from the suffragettes, because they would write in their correspondence and diaries, things like that, I think women should have the vote. I don't know if it's going to happen in my lifetime, but I am going to do everything I can to make it happen. So you work for something even though you don't put a date in which it has to happen. Law number 4, the individuals in the group must accept that they may not get either credit or acknowledgement for what they have done and be authentically okay about this. This is a big one because people's egos get involved and they want credit. They want to be acknowledged. And yet, that may not happen, and you have to be okay with it. I mean, today, you could hardly mention or list the names of critical abolitionists who got rid of slavery, but the role that they played was critically important, and they did it even though they realized maybe weren't ever going to be acknowledged or remembered for it. You do this because it fosters being, and fostering well-being is always, of the options available to you, the best option. Always. I cannot find an exception. Law number 5. Each person in the group, regardless of gender, religion, race, or culture, must enjoy fundamental equality, even as the various roles in the hierarchy of the effort are respected. Now, this is another one of these things that people have a hard time with, but you have to do it in order to make it work. And that is, you have to recognize whether you are a person high up in the hierarchy or whether you're just one of the worker bees, that you have fundamental quality as a human being, and that you're doing your part, whatever your part is, and you're okay with that. Law number 6. This was the hard one for me, by the way. The individuals in the group must forswear violence in word, act, or thought. And I confess to you, particularly during the civil rights when I was a young man, and I would see dogs set on the demonstrators, particularly the women, that my initial reaction was not nonviolent. But I learned from studying what Gandhi had done and what Martin Luther King did and what Nelson Mandela did, that you have to approach this without wanting to do violence. And that's, of course, the big problem in the United States today, is we're seeing so much individual violence. So law number 7, the individuals in the group and the group itself must make their private selves consistent with their public postures. I learned this from Benjamin Franklin. I would research on Franklin, who's the most interesting of all the founders, in my opinion. He had been sent to France to get the money to fund the revolution and to get the French Navy involved against the British Navy. And he got a letter after he got there. Now he's 74 years old. He's been sent to France to talk to the Comte de Vergennes, and he gets this letter, and it says, Dr. Franklin, I think he is spying on you and reporting what you're doing and talking about privately. And Franklin wrote back, and this is what taught me this law. He said, if in all other reasons my valet is a competent person in the task, and he is, I don't care, because I don't say in private anything different than I say in public. And if you think about all the people we know who publicly say one thing but privately are a very different kind of person, you understand what this means. You have to be authentically what you're saying and who you say you are. And law number 8, the individuals in the group and the group collectively must always act from the beingness of life-affirming integrity. That is, you must always choose to foster well-being at every level. And I will close with this, and I get into this in great detail in the workshop. You, every day, have dozens of little decisions that you make. The things you buy, the places you go, the companies you invest in, whatever. You have to do a little research and find out whether they actually support well-being or not. You have to make well-being more important than profit. Although, as I said, it turns out that fostering well-being is more profitable than any. But you have to, so that every choice you make all day long fosters compassionate, life-affirming well-being. I call it the quotidian choice. Quotidian, I chose that word because it's not a usual word, so people would remember. It means ordinary, mundane, regular. So if you make regular, daily choices that each foster well-being of the options available to you, and you tell people that you're doing it, and invite them to do it, and tell 10 of their friends, if the people who will hear this radio program will commit to this, will make a commitment to the quotidian choice, every choice they make, they will do research, they will find out if it fosters well-being or not, and they do it, and their friends do it, and their friends do it. By the time we get to the November election, the people listening to this program can change the course of American history. Now, I know that that sounds very odd or blatant or, overly bravado or whatever, but the truth is that we know from research, again, facts, we know from research when 10% of any cohort, whether it's a church group, a school group, a neighborhood group, or a country, when 10% of the people commit to kind of consciousness, fostering well-being in this case, the whole community has got to accommodate for that. When you and I were boys, the word that you would hear about black people was Negro. You never hear that word anymore. Why? Nobody passed a law, said you can't say it. The NAACP still has it in their name, but you never hear anybody say it. They say black. Why? Because there was a change in consciousness. I'll give you another one. When you and I were boys and you went to somebody's house, they had an ashtray on the coffee table, and there was a pack of cigarettes and one of those Ronson lighters. You never see that anymore. Why? Nobody passed a law that said you can't put an ashtray and a pack of cigarettes on your coffee table in the living room. But when was the last time you saw it? Years ago. Because people heard the medical evidence and they quit smoking. So this is all about how individuals make choices, and when they do it in concert and collectively, and they follow these 8 laws that I've outlined and that I talk about in detail in the workshop, they can change the whole society. They don't have to have money. They don't have to have official position. They don't have to be famous or anything like that. When they asked Gandhi just before he was assassinated, how in the world did you get the British to give up India, their most cherished colonial possession, without a war? How did you force them to do that? And he said, it wasn't what we did that mattered, although that did matter. It wasn't what we said, although that also mattered. It was the nature of our beingness, the nature of our character, the way we thought, the choices that we made that led the British to choose to give India independence. And as we come up on the November election, if the people that are listening to this broadcast commit themselves to every choice of the options available, being one that is compassionate, life-affirming, and fostering of well-being, and tell others that they're doing it and get others to join them, it will change the course of the election. Guaranteed.
Well, I think that really sums it up excellently, and what's going to be gone over in collective consciousness as we all participate in this upcoming online workshop from April 20 to May 5. And I just want to say, as we come to the end here, a couple of things. One is that you mentioned in your materials that anthropologist Margaret Mead famously said, quote, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has," close quote. Now, in addition to that familiar quotation, I want to also add that she said something very much in explanation and expansion of that, which was that if the world is going to change, the conversation must deepen. And that has been a direct inspiration for myself in creating these living dialogues, these co-creative living dialogues and personal story sharing that we're engaging in right now in this example together, Stephan. And I have often talked about in my living dialogues the situation of India and Gandhi and pointed out that his methodology he called satyagraha, which means literally always adhering to the truth. And this is very much in play right now in our larger disinformation and misinformation, social media and major media saturation of consciousness as we go to make the choices for or against a democracy or a dictatorship in this particular election. He also said something that I often use in my programs. In conclusion, is that this is Gandhi saying that when I despair, I remember that all through history, the way of truth and love have always won. There have been tyrants and murderers, and for a time they can seem invincible. But in the end, they always fail. Think of it, always. And so here in conclusion, I would say that the path of well-being, of satyagraha, always adhering to the truth, is so critical and is the great guideline for making all of our actions in favor of well-being. And so with that conclusion, Stephan, I just want to say, for being such a truth teller all of your life here and in all of your work, I just want to honor you, your immense contribution here, which can be accessed in all of its many dimensions by our deep listening audience, which has co-created and inspired this dialogue together in their own yearning for truth and their experience of quotidian choices of selecting media like this, which is a truth-telling media. Also, they can go to schwartzreport.net, sign up for the free daily information that you give out so excellently every day, but also get the information as to how to register for this upcoming seminar, April 20 to May 5. And you can get the registration anytime up to April 20. So with that, Stephan, I want to so appreciate how much our co-creative dialogues have meant to me all these years.
Well, I appreciate it, and I see your program as an example, exactly what I'm fostering well-being. That's each of us in our own way.
And there we have it. I think we acknowledge here in conclusion with great gratitude the yearning for truth and well-being and nonviolent opportunity to be in community in an authentic and integral way that's coming from the yearning of our deep listening audience, which I have understood over the years is physically present with us right now, you might say, transcending the laws of time and space. And it is evoking this kind of testimonial to how we can move forward together. So with thanks to them and thanks to yourself, Stephan, I want to just say, be with us next time, and many thanks to our deep listening audience for having evoked this program. All the very best.